Welcome everybody to Write Better Together, a commercial. What? I thought there were no commercials on this show. I'm John Myers. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers and everybody. We're here to tell you all that we are writing a book.
I know so much about this book. I know that we've already started it. I know it's called Write Anyway. I know it's going to have a subtitle. Oh, I don't know the subtitle yet. Man, I was doing so well. I knew so much
Still
about it.
working on a subtitle.
Dang.
But we also know that we're about 30% done with it, that it's going to come out in August.
August?
Then in August, yeah, we got a lot of work to do, John Myers. And it's going to be about the writing lifestyle and encouraging you to always, no matter what, write anyway.
Yeah, good or bad, life happens. So you're a writer. You need to write anyway.
And that's what the book is about.
Welcome everybody to Write Better Together. I'm John Myers. Hey, look everybody, it's Emily Brooks.
Hello, John Myers.
Hey, Emily, what are we gonna talk about today?
Well, we have quite the list and quite the guest.
Yay.
So today we have Sara Wigal on, and she's worked in publishing and she currently teaches at Belmont, and she's going to introduce herself some more, but she's going to be talking about mindfulness and productivity.
She doesn't deny her expertise, does she?
You'll have to wait and see.
Oh, okay. I'll have to watch this episode.
We do have a thing where guests like to deny their expertise, and it's very funny. That's throwing me off. Before that, we're going to have a response to a call to action, or at least a listener response of some kind. And then Sarah's going to give you an excellent call to action.
Yes.
And then we're going to talk about our secret topic, our Hey John Myers topic.
Oh my.
And then we're going to have the final act where I invent a random game for John Myers to play.
It's like, name every cartoon character that ever existed in chronological order.
Okay, so some of mine have been really hard in the past, so I apologize.
All right, so first, how'd you get out of your bubble, Emily?
So, I actually did get out of my bubble quite a bit this week.
Wow.
Just like hanging out with my sister because she moved, and I'm really sad. She and her family moved to South Carolina.
Oh, moved away.
Yeah. And then I had a small group that I met, but I really want to just, because we're talking to Sara Wigal today, I just wanted to say that we're talking to Sara today because I got out of my bubble.
Yes.
And that's not to brag. That's just to say, like, stuff happens when you go places. We've already had a whole episode on the writing conference and that I went to in Tennessee. Well, one of the speakers there was Sara, and I kind of like hung out in the back of the room afterwards trying to decide if I should go talk to her. And some other writers I was with was like, you should definitely do that. Because I was like, should I invite her on my podcast? And they're like, definitely do that. You should go. And so I did. And like, Sara was just so kind and so willing. And so I sent her an email later and she said yes. And now we have this new friend.
Yeah, and it was fantastic. And she invited us to her WriterFest. And like, had you never opened your mouth, just imagine, it would have never happened.
Like, I could have just gone and sat in her workshop and gone, that was nice, and then left. But it just took a little bit of courage, and we made that connection, and she's great.
Yeah, I was going to say it seemed like she would be easy to talk to. Well, we talked to her for almost an hour, so obviously she was easy to talk to.
You mean we're about to talk to her, John Myers?
Oh, I shattered the illusion.
How did you get out of your bubble?
What makes you think I got out of my bubble?
You usually do something. Did you go on your stupid walk?
I did go on my stupid walk. And on my stupid walk, I realized if I'm driving somewhere, like with my lemonade story or whatever, my the mystery girl story.
Yeah.
Like when I was driving, for some reason, I think that's not me getting out of my bubble. Like, does it always have to be on my walk? No. So like why is it turned into my brain where it has to be walking? I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it doesn't. Get out of your bubble however you want. It doesn't have to be on a stupid walk. However, I was on a stupid walk, and now that I can only, you have to tune into previous episodes to find out why I can't walk in 2 of the 4 directions now. And so I was walking in one of the 2 remaining directions from my house, and I saw a brand new Muffler Man. And here is, I took a picture of it. Here's the picture right here,
Oh my
right
goodness.
there. And it's I'll let the listeners chime in. And so there is a muffler component to it, but it was at a break shop, but it was the same concept as when we talked about Muffler Men before. And I'm looking for the book to hold up, but it's in our bookstore. And
Yeah, this was like episode 0 or episode 1
is
or
that when it was?
2.
I was going to ask you that.
I don't remember. I think it was episode 1 maybe that we talked about the Muffler Man.
Yeah, I know the book is in our
It
bookshop,
is.
and
Yes.
but I was going to hold it up, but I don't see where it is. It's blue. Anyway,
I'll put a picture up.
all right, and I'll put a picture up of the Muffler Man,
Yes.
and so do you still call it well, yeah, it has a muffler in it. Like I said, do you still call it a Muffler Man when the Muffler Men were artists or the welders at muffler shops who made muffler men who made muffler men. Well, these are brake people, and most of the parts are from brakes or wheels. And so is it still is it legit Muffler Man?
I'll have to wait until I see the picture, but everybody else can chime in.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, that's it. That's all I did, is
I love
went
it.
and discovered a new Muffler Man.
Can't wait to see it. So, what's the we have a listener response.
Oh yeah. Here's a picture right here. Here's
Yeah, another
picture.
picture that I can't
Another
see.
picture. Mo sent us Morgan Stevens, writer, author. Is he an
Friend.
author yet? He's a writer. Friend, community member in the podcast. He sent us a picture of him holding up Bob Saenz' book. I know I have that on the
Which is
bookshelf.
also in our bookshop, friends.
This is also in our bookshop, and so Mo got it, and he is so far enjoying it and loving it, and he sent us a picture because he would have never known about it if he couldn't have done it without us. Because
Yes.
he would have never known about the book if it weren't for us. And
I
then
love it.
so there you go.
I love it. All right. Here is our conversation with Sara.
Welcome everybody. We've already been here, but here's Emily Brooks is still here.
Hello, everybody. Hey, look, everybody. It's Sara Wigal.
Where'd she come from?
Thanks so much for having me on Write Better Together.
Yes, thank you so much. So Sara is here to join us to talk about mindfulness and productivity, and I got to hear her talk about this at the Tennessee Writing Workshop, and it was so good and so important, and so we're so glad to have you here. Sara, will you tell our listeners more about yourself?
Absolutely. So my background is in book publishing, working in the industry itself. I was a literary publicist for a little more than a decade, 11 or 12 years. And while I was a publicist, which is a super fast-paced job, a lot of not great work-life separation, having to take phone calls or answer emails really late at night or sometimes really early in the morning. So I would burn out, and no matter how productive I could be, I still couldn't seem to sort of keep my mind right because of how challenging the nature of that job was for me anyway. And while I was still working in PR and I was managing a team and I was also managing an internship program, I got to know some of my interns and also some of the alumni from the same college that I was working with, and noticed how much I enjoyed interacting with them in this kind of training, teaching capacity. So I got hooked in with Belmont University, where there's actually a publishing major studying the business of books. And I was guest lecturing. Then I started adjunct instructing. And then 5 years ago, started full-time teaching. So I'm the director of publishing there. And while all this was going on, I was not only beginning to teach young people about working in the business and sort of how to stay afloat in a pretty fast-paced entertainment industry that's constantly changing, especially as technology rolls out, but also thinking about their wellness, their mindfulness, how they could become not just a successful work robot, but at Belmont especially, we really focus on what we call whole person formation. So how do we help grow these people that are going to go and be wonderful in the world one day and feel satisfied by their life? So there was that going on. And then simultaneously, I also started working with a good friend, Amy McConnell, who's now my business partner. And I'm the director of WriterFest, which is a writers conference every November in Nashville. And we work with writers of book, song, and screen. So we're the only conference that we know of, at least. I try to be truthful, that is looking at all these different writers and trying to unite them and bring them together with about 2.5 days of programming. So I kind of have like during the year, I'm mostly Belmont. And then during the summer, I switch gears and I'm like all WriterFest, just like getting plugged in, working on a bunch of things for our programming, because we do events throughout the year. We had a wonderful event with the audiobook narrator, Julia Whalen, just a few days ago, which was amazing. So I keep pretty busy, and that's why I really try to talk about mindfulness and how to attempt to balance one's life, because I personally find it really challenging. And I think that sometimes we're really attracted to the things we're just actually not naturally talented at doing. And I'm not naturally talented at relaxing. So I've had to make myself learn how to do it. And that's something that I love talking about with other people and trying to help them do it. And it really applies to writers too, for a few reasons I'm sure we'll talk about this afternoon.
At Belmont, do you get them right away? Do you get first year students, or do you get them? So that's great, because you get them off to a good start.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have students that at Belmont, we have a special kind of advising program where one of the faculty in your major becomes your advisor throughout your time spent. And every semester you're required to meet with them to talk about your course selections. And they're also just sort of an extra resource to you. So I meet my students in the foundation course that they take, although typically I meet them during the admissions process, and also through advising. And then even if some semesters I don't have class with them, I'm more or less seeing them at some point all 4-ish years of their academic career. And so anything we're kind of working on in various classes can be carried through because of that opportunity for continuity.
I love that. So we've had a lot of teachers. I just realized we've had a lot of teachers on this podcast. This could almost be a teaching podcast, but I love that holistic approach, because I think sometimes in school and in work, we kind of are just like, you should be able to do this. Like, here's all the work, just do it. Without that, without giving people the tools they need to actually accomplish that and be healthy mentally and physically.
Absolutely. Well, some of my research and just some of the classroom opportunities that I've been interested in creating for students have to do with, and not just my own identification. I think a lot of professors and high school teachers and younger as well have identified some of the skills that might lack in certain students when they get to you, that might seem common sense or might seem about organization, things that at their age maybe no one has taught them and it's not their fault, and yet we're expecting them to have those skills to be successful. And at first I would kind of look around like, well, why don't you know the difference between delete and archive in your email inbox? If you don't know that, please Google. But I'd be like, this is what delete is, this is what archive is. And a lot of my 18 to 22-year-olds did not know the difference. They were scared to archive because they thought it meant delete. and that made their inboxes a nightmare. So really simple things that as people that maybe are a little older, we had to actually be trained on, computer systems or how to work different internet applications. Like we received training often in educational settings, even. Younger people today are not receiving that same training necessarily. They're just being launched into the world. And that was kind of part of what I first was noticing was a problem. And it was happening, well, even before I was teaching. I think it was when I was, teaching in an internship setting where I was noticing like these students don't know things that, now I can't remember if I knew at their age or not.
So this is a good fit because that's no matter, like I've taught at university level English and film. So as Emily's seen me teach and I've seen her teach. That's totally, even if they're first year English students in English 100, half the class is how to college. Like we're teaching them. I
Yes.
love teaching freshmen. I love teaching first year students in the first semester. I don't like
Yeah.
when I get them in spring semester, I've got to retrain them because sometimes they learn this or that. The things like you're talking about email, they learn that from their roommates because no professor took the time to teach them that. And it's so much better when you get them fall of their first
It's a
year.
problem with our academic system because, if you have an instructor that's tasked with teaching content, then it's really having them go above and beyond to look at these sort of life skills in addition to whatever that content is. And that's unfair to the faculty. And yet there's not always these programs that can help the students. Some universities have them. I know at Belmont, we have a lot of programming that's, meant to help with the transition, but how many times can you tell a student something and they're still are like, I don't think you ever mentioned that would be on this test, and that's just in nature. It's nothing necessarily bad about the particular students. So I just think it takes a lot of reinforcement. And what I started to notice was thinking about kind of people that are looking into careers where you have to operate on all cylinders, which is, like PR or working in any entertainment industry. Sounds like, John, you really know from screenwriting. It's like you have to be on all the time. And in order to support kind of your mind's work and your creativity, I think you need to be really organized to be successful. And I noticed like, okay, it would be a deficit. Like I can't just teach the content. I'm going to have to go into these other areas as well, because they're the reason why I've had any success. It's not just my content knowledge. It's really these kind of business administration skills that I've been developing and learning about over the years.
Absolutely. So I'm trying to think of the next question. How we could transition to I really want to talk about mindfulness. So when you're creating those holistic approaches for your students, what does that look like? I know in the workshop you talked about teaching them to be mindful and to take care of their mental health, even with all of this other stuff that they have to do.
Yeah, so I guess my story with the beginning of a small exploratory study that I did in like 2020 and 2021, I had a friend that I made at work. Her name is Cherie Broussard, and she was a professor of PR. And she's actually gone back to practice now. She is full-time back in PR. She's not teaching. She every time we talk, she's like, I miss having students. But she and I met in a kind of mindfulness-centered faculty group where we connected over the fact that we were both publicists and we both were really interested in mindfulness, in part because we found it so challenging, as I've said before. And we talked about the need for our students to find a way to cope with the kind of breakneck pace that they would probably one day experience in their lives, because we were noticing, as young as they already are, that they were burning out, or they were kind of living this sort of stressful event to stressful event to stressful event lifestyle. And we were like, this is not going to be sustainable. And we hate that people in this particular career path burn out and leave or go do something else when there's so much that's wonderful about this career. I always feel like a hypocrite saying that as a person that's a former publicist, because I left. But I kind of get a little taste of it sometimes with pro bono consulting and things like that I get to do for the library here. But she and I chatted for a while, and we ended up designing this study where we would figure out a mindfulness intervention and pair it with some of the productivity tips that we thought were really helpful for ourselves as professionals, and that we would then go in, use, do kind of like, it's called a classroom intervention, just meaning that it was a one-day presentation, essentially. Like, we did a thing one time and talk to the students about mindfulness and talk to them about productivity, and then figure out a way to kind of test that and see if it worked, meaning we were able to help them become more mindful. And it was a wonderful experience, and we were able to publish our findings in the Journal of the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning, which is a really wonderful publication for teachers that are interested in improving their teaching and their kind of classroom environment, and the learning process for their students. And what we found was, mostly what we found out is so much more research is needed. One thing that we found out was that there was very little research on mindfulness interventions for undergraduate populations. It was mostly for grad students or working professionals. So we were really, weirdly, we thought, how could no one have done this before? But we were pretty cutting edge, actually, I think, on what we were doing. And also, no one had paired mindfulness with productivity before, which to us felt supernatural. So we found that the quantitative data, did indicate an increase in mindfulness, but it was a really small finding. But the qualitative data for our exploratory study of 26 people, that's what was phenomenal. And when I do have spoken publicly, so Emily, you got to hear a little bit about this. I think I read some of the student comments even maybe, but the students talked about how the fact that this was a program in their class and not an additional optional university offering or something like that made them feel really cared for, made them feel more deeply connected to their peers and to the faculty members conducting the intervention, because it felt caring. And they talked about how both sides were very kind of net positive experiences. So really wonderful feedback. And then over the years, because I do have them and I have been doing this for 4 years now, just again, more anecdotal evidence from my students talking about, oh yeah, well, when I'm doing my breathing and whatever that I learned in pausing for more, and I have so many stories, I could tell you about the things that they've said to me. So I presented this research a couple times this year, and I'm excited because we're about to dive back in. I have a partner, a new partner coming on with me and Cherie, and he's going to help us to conduct more research in this area. So we're going back in. We're going to go back in for another paper. So check back later, and maybe a few years from now, we'll have a follow-up study.
That would be amazing.
So that reminds me, so where Emily and I taught in the past, when the first semester of the pandemic, we went to spring break and we weren't allowed to come back, and so we finished on Zoom. That was the only time I ever taught on Zoom. I went back with a mask, face to face. At one point, in a department of 40 people, there were just 4 of us, and the biggest germaphobe in the world, that's me. I was one of the 4, and because I give the customer what they want, and that's what they wanted. But during that 6 weeks where we were on Zoom, I learned this from Dr. I can't remember her name. We'll put it in the show notes. And but she was a sociology professor, and they had a problem with the students wouldn't turn their cameras on and all that. I never had that problem because they always had to show things to the camera, right? and so, but we would start each session with we didn't call it a mindfulness minute, but we should have. They had to do breathing, and they had to do 10 seconds of if there were 24 people in the class, they had to do 10 seconds of eye contact with each of those 24 squares. And
Wow.
I would say it was 50-50 of the people that bought into it the first day. But you got to watch it grow over that 6 weeks. And when I had students face to face later, a year later, 2 years later, they always remembered that, because no one else did that for no one else did that for them, and they really connected with each other. They were in Texas and Chicago because they all got sent home, and they got kicked out of their dorms and sent home, and they were all over the country, but they were able to connect with each other just like they were 2 weeks earlier when they were all face to face in the class, and it really, like you said, it really stuck with them for 3-4 years.
Studies indicate that when you have kind of a softer learning environment, that students actually learn more. They learn better because they feel like good vibes and they're like ready to go. So, I've tried to implement that sense of fun and togetherness into my classroom. I still get told by students that they find me incredibly intimidating. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what to tell you, but sometimes teachers are intimidating. It doesn't mean you can't get to know them. I think it's just a different generational thing. I don't remember ever thinking that, I remember being in college and all my faculty were intimidating to me just because they were the faculty. But that didn't mean I didn't I don't know. So there's different culture surrounding relationships to faculty now, I think, with students, and some fear involved that sometimes can be detrimental to their learning process. And so I think when you're implementing, doing group activities, I'll give you an example because you talked about your breathing and that eye contact thing's really cool. I would do a lot of, during the pandemic, I would do a lot of who's got their pets with them? We were all looking at everybody's cats. And
yes.
I would usually show my 2 dogs at the beginning of the call at some point and kind of move my camera around. Had to make sure if I was wearing sweatpants on the bottom, to be careful of,
Yes.
I'm seeing it right now. I'm at the beach, so I'm in my little chambray and then I've got shorts on. But I look okay professional for this. So some of the activities that I have done with my students and the ones that I teach in the pausing for more intervention, because we're saying if you actually slow down, you can do more. And Cherie gave it that name, and I think it's genius. So I have to give her that shout out there. I talked to them about one thing is breathing. So we breathe the box, which is breathing in for 4 breaths, holding your breath for 4 counts, and then breathing out for 4 counts. And then we repeat it 4 times. And when I present on this, I actually will have the crowd do it with me. So I'll have them close your eyes and we're going to all breathe together. And this is very, for some people, maybe they've gone to a zillion yoga classes and that's normal. For other people, they're like, this is so weird and out of the box. I can't believe she's making me do this. But I think it's a good thing to, kind of test ourselves. And they have indicated, medical science has indicated that when you slow down and breathe more, that you can calm your nervous system. So it really is physiologically helpful. So that's one mindfulness strategy that I talk about with students, to give an example. And the feedback they give is they talk about, oh, I got nervous before a test, so I was doing my breathing and I felt better. Or I have a hard time falling asleep at night, so I do that and then I feel better. So things like that, very practical, very simple, easy to remember, so you can do on your own. Another one is text contemplation, and this can be, Belmont University is a Christ-centered university is the language we use. Not all of my students are Christians, but most of them have some kind of faith practice. And so they might do scriptural contemplation, reading something from the Bible or the Quran or something like that. But then there's also simply reading poetry. So in class, I try to have my classroom be a neutral space where faith is welcome, but not provided, I guess is the best way I can put that. We all have very different philosophies about that at Belmont, by the way. But I use a poem and not scripture so that it feels safe and inclusive for everyone, no matter what. And I will read a poem. I'll have a student read it as well, so it's not just my voice in their mind. And then we read it silently, and then we just talk about how did it make us feel. And they're shocked because they're like, well, I'm not a poetry person, or I don't know anything about literature. And I'm like, you don't have to. This is just you and your heart and what you're feeling right now. And that's a really lovely way to kind of connect. And they'll tell me, oh yeah, I started doing that. I'm reading poems, 3 times a week after lunch, and it makes me feel grounded. I think there's a maintenance person here, you guys. Can we pause for a second?
Yeah, we can pause.
Bring him on the show.
No. Hi.
Teach him some mindfulness.
1 second.
You're good.
No. Yeah, I think pienso que estamos bien. Sí. Gracias. No pasa nada.
We're totally leaving that in.
You can leave it in. Oh my gosh. I don't know. It was pest control. Like I'm not. I'm like I haven't seen any.
You better let him do his job.
Not right now. I'm like I think we're good, and I don't want them spraying while I'm in here. Like
oh, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah. That's so funny.
All right, you can bill me as the pest control episode. Anyway, anyway, the third. Okay, so we talked about text contemplation. We talked about breathing, and then another modality that we talk about with our students is journaling. And I usually present to them that, there's kind of 2 schools of thoughts. You can either do like a morning pages, Julia Cameron type thing, or you can just write at nighttime. But that either way, and I have gotten specific feedback from the students, and I did not invent this, of course, but I'm just, passing on this information. Oh, okay. Now my partner's back. We're just like, it's crazy. Zoom. That the I totally lost it. We're gonna have
whether it was
journaling.
You said something about like whether it was in the evening or the morning. Yeah,
evening or morning, and that it is kind of the most important thing is that they're not writing to reread it. Yeah. That they're writing it to just write it and throw it away, essentially, never look at it again. And I've had specific feedback from students, that's what I was saying, that it released them from this feeling of, I don't even want to write anything unless I write it perfectly. Yeah. And they needed that permission that, no, this is for you in the moment. It's not for you later. And it's certainly not for anyone else. And then that opened them up to being able to write 4, 5, 10 pages every morning and get out all their thoughts and anxieties. And then they just felt good all day. And I don't even do that myself. That's incredible.
That is.
Like I do the breathing. That's the one I do the most of. I think, that's a pretty amazing thing to give to an 18-year-old. And then you make them practice for an entire semester and check in over the years, and then it can become a life habit if they choose to implement that. So
how long are your classes at Belmont?
The class that I teach the intervention in is a 75-minute class.
So we have, in the past, we had 80 and 55 or 50, I don't remember, minute classes. But so we would do that at the beginning of every class, but we would do it in class. So it would just be a free write, right? And but it was basically journaling. There's no wrong answer. There's no right or wrong. But we did, and if it was a topic, Untangle this cord while you untangle your life was a game that Emily had to play last week.
Yes.
If they were wrestling with a hard topic and they were working their way through it, they could share. Everyone had to share, and so they didn't throw it away, but they didn't have to share anything they were uncomfortable with sharing. So they could talk around it. They could put it in, um, put it, they could tell the story, but put it on their best friend or put it on their grandma, even though it really happened to them. And so when everyone does that, um, they get really comfortable. Plus, in the first week, don't tell anybody this, but we don't do any schoolwork. We don't do any English, anything. We do team building for the whole first week, whether it's 3 days a week or 2 days a week. And so by week 2, they're all a team.
I love that.
Even if you have 125 students, that's 24 in this class and 27 in this class, and they're teams, and so they're fine with sharing because they know each other. Even the most shyest introverted person will share something, and it's very weird. Like if you ever guest teach at someone else's class, like this happened to me. So someone brought me in to guest teach in week 9 of their class, and I had them do a free write, and then no one would share. Like in week 9.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, what? This is a creative writing class. Why is no one sharing? And they're like, you mean out loud? I'm like, and so yeah, it's not one size fits all, definitely.
No, I love that. I'm sitting here kind of dumbfounded that I didn't think of it myself, that I'm like, wait a second, because I have them breathe in class with me occasionally. We'll start class, we'll be doing that. We read poems a few times throughout the semester, and then I don't have them do any journaling actually with me. They do a lot of reflective writing homework, but I'm like, why am I not doing that in class? That's such a good idea. And then using it as a way to kickstart a conversation. The other thing I do, which it's not in the study, but I also just make them stretch. So I'll like get up and be like, everybody, as long as you are able and feeling well, please stand with me. And I'll like lead them in stretches, but I'll tell them that they can, I'm like, if you feel compelled, your body needs something different, go ahead. And I have a weird crossover of students who are studying publishing and also are ballerinas. So I have like a ton of dancers in my classes, which is really fun. So, and I dance salsa. So we get up and we're just like stretching together, and people don't think it's weird. I mean, some of the people think it's weird, but I'm just like, bored, like get comfortable. So that's something else that we do that I think is very bonding, because it's like you're hopping around or whatever. And at first they're nervous. By the end of the semester, they're like, oh yay, we're doing stretch time. Like I'm not just a learning robot in your classroom. So
in film school, screenwriters had to take acting 101, which in hindsight is a great thing. But so you might have 20 people and there'd be 5 screenwriters and the rest would be all theater majors. But every class started with stretching, and you had to like reach to grab the pear off the tree. And the 5 of us were really uncomfortable, but that uncomfortableness lasted maybe 3 classes, and then it was gone. And then the theater people, they were used to that. And so but yeah, it's a great practice.
I think it's a good reminder even for us, like, who are not in school, to take care of ourselves. Like, we can have our own, like, initiate our own stretch time or our own breathing time and be like, okay, I'm not a working robot either. Like, I can take a minute. Like, I've been sitting at this desk for too long. I need to get up and stretch. And it's a good reminder.
So interesting that you said that. So here's my notepad. When we're done with Sarah. So Emily and I are teaching a master class at WriterCon in Oklahoma City, and I've added, because we'll have segments. Like we haven't built
It's
the
like
outline
a 3-hour thing. Yeah,
it's a 3-hour master class, and so we'll have segments in it, and we definitely are adding a mindfulness segment.
I love it. I'm inspired
towards the front of it. And those are people that are 40, 50 years old. They're all, you know who they are. They're not 18 and 19-year-olds, and they need that.
I think, something I talk about with students, something I talked about at the presentation Emily came to was, the we all know mind-body connection, but we don't always think about it in terms of anything other than improving our squats at the gym or whatever.
Right.
That's the context in which people think about it, or
Yeah.
having a really great yoga session. But it's helpful at all times for us to be grounded into our bodies and not just be, cerebral or floating out in space. And so when I talk to my students about, like, you have to be inside your body to learn. You have to be inside your body to write and to create. And if you're creating from a place of disconnectedness, then you're not going to, you're essentially adding your own hurdles to jump over on your path toward the finished whatever it is that you're making. And that by slowing down, we actually, we pause for more. We are able to accomplish more that we care about.
Wow. So we were talking about journaling earlier. I wanted to say that's been a really important thing in my life for that not being distracted. Like, you take that moment to put everything out there so that when you are writing or doing whatever you're trying to focus on, you're like, I already thought about that today. Or if it's an evening practice, okay, I'm going to think about that later. And it's almost like permission to let it go for a little while. And I've never said this on the podcast, but
Let's all lean in.
I realized that I realized that the person who is now my husband was the person that I wanted to be my husband as I was journaling.
Oh.
Because it unlocks stuff in you. Like, if you're just sitting there doing nothing and thinking, sometimes your brain, you get distracted and you're thinking about all these other things. And but when you're journaling and you're letting it all just come out, it's like you process things differently when you're writing. And it was like, I needed to journal. I'm sure I would have had the revelation at some point, but as it was, as I was processing things in my journal is when I was like, oh, I want to date him. Like, I like this guy.
Does he know this story? Or is he going to learn it on
Yes,
the podcast?
he's read my journals,
Okay.
so yeah. At least those parts of it, not all of it.
I think there's something about the writing process, whether it's by hand journaling or if you're typing, but like in kind of a journal setting. Because I was thinking about like the differences between those experiences as well while you were talking, Emily. But I think that no matter what, it is a way of thinking. It is a way of coming to conclusions about yourself and about your life. And we don't always give ourselves those opportunities these days.
Yeah.
It feels like such a gift when you're able to kind of think that way, I guess.
Yeah, and it is a sacrifice of time. I say sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard sometimes to, like, I don't always journal because I'm like, I've got so many other things that I need to do, but I never regret it when I do take that time, because that's time that I could have been spending just scrolling on my phone, and instead I did it to really do something that was actually helpful and important.
You're getting at here kind of the premise of the second part of the study. So that was a really good transition, because I think people think, again, like, I don't want to pause. I don't want to slow down. I've got to go. And then they burn out, or they make a mistake, or they just don't process through their feelings about something or whatever it is, because they think that's the way to optimize their productivity. But slowing down, practicing mindfulness is actually a tool for productivity. But then there's also the sort of like direct productivity skills that we try to teach our students. I mentioned before that, kind of some basic email skills and etiquette they may not know. So we'll teach those, delete versus archive, suggest maybe using some kind of organizational method up to their discretion, and I'll kind of point them in a few directions with links of, these are some options to think about. Using inbox zero for sure. I'm a huge proponent. All that means is that you are trying to not have any unread messages in your inbox. And when they're unread, it means it's because there's still a to-do for you. It means there's an action item you haven't gotten to. So I can tell you for a fact that I'm under 10 unreads in each of my inboxes right now. And that's just because I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back to that person after vacation when I have time. So this is a really great organizational tool that my students have, like, the ones that start doing it, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Deleting my 14,000 emails while I watched TV last weekend, like, I just thought it was like busy work, but I did it. And then now I realize that every time I get an email, I see it. And there's this weird emotional pressure that's been lifted. So listener, whoever you are, if you are not practicing inbox zero, please Google that. This is like the most important thing I can tell you to do.
Do you do that, Emily?
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah.
John, are you lagging behind?
I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
Don't be shamed, but just, go put on your favorite podcast and do some organizing. It can be a weird, like, fun kind of thing. I'm famous with my students. I always say, like, this is kind of fun, like, about like work or other tasks that are not good. It's probably something my mom said to me growing up, but yeah, kind of fun.
So I do organize. I have more folders than I probably should. I had a student, and this is related. Don't worry, I'm not going on a sidetrack or rabbit trail, Emily. Who not only did she have 25 folders, they were all color coded, right? And then on her notes, on the back of her backpack, she had, like, it looked like when you buy the whole array of 24 markers in all the different colors, they were in this sleeve, and her folders in real life, her analog folders and her markers in her highlighting matched the colors of the folders on her email. And
my word.
She was never late for anything. She was the most organized, and I've used her as a model. When I've told that story I tell it every semester like, this is extreme, but it works. And so you have to do you and find your own version of that, but it works. But I need to inbox zero.
What a queen. I love her.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's an inspiring message. It sounds kind of crazy, but I absolutely can see how the kind of color coding, because I talk to my students about this, like, there are some kind of almost subliminal things you can do to help yourself stay more organized. And that's a really good example of one that might feel a little tricky for the average person, but clearly was working for her really well. And I'm sure someone could kind of break that down, into a more palatable, easier kind of version. Because 25 is that's kind of a lot. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, even as simple as having your email inbox folders be the same names as your desktop folders, or like your document folders, like something like that could be helpful, is something I'm thinking about. But yeah, so we do kind of those basic email skills we talk about with them. And then the biggest one is talking about kind of mission and purpose, and then how that specifically helps to align the way we spend our time. So I love time boxing, which I was doing it before I think I knew that term, but using physical representations on my calendar of how much time it would take me to do something has been really helpful. So, like, if you looked at my GCal this week, it's lovely, actually, because I'm on vacation, so there's very little, which is really nice. But in a normal week, you might see 20 things on a single day, not because I have 20 meetings, but because I'm estimating the time that it takes me to run a personal errand, then have a work meeting, then have 2 hours where I'm emailing clients for a very specific purpose related to WriterFest, like, kind of putting it all in. And when you estimate your time that way, it's really easy to see what you don't have time for. And that's what I talk to my students about, that how do we prioritize our time? And Stephen Covey's matrix about, time urgency and importance is really helpful there too. And we kind of show that to our students. But, what we suggest really is, we love social media too. It's super fun, but it's not urgent, and it's typically not important unless it's for a job. So, if you're not putting in on your calendar like an hour of scrolling mindlessly, like the doom scroll takes up time. And if your calendar is reflecting accurately what you're doing, and prioritizing the tasks you need to do, you're probably going to end up realizing, like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And if all of a sudden an entire day is gone for X activity that didn't help you move forward, and moving forward could still mean relaxing. Moving forward can be connecting socially with other people. Those are all good things too. But looking for how we accomplish what we as individuals want to do, and not get sidetracked from our own personal goals even. So I think most people can relate to that idea, and pushing them to implement it in the classroom setting can help them hopefully start to kickstart some of those better habits. Although I will say less people choose the time boxing, like in class when we kind of like, okay, pick a productivity skill. A lot of them will do email, inbox zero, and then also Pomodoro method, the idea, like you set a timer and do like 20 minutes of work and then 5 minutes of break. A lot of them like to do that too because it's helpful for studying specifically.
So give our listeners the practical application. So I do time boxing as well. And by our listeners, I mean me. Tell me what to do about this. So I do exactly, again, like you said, I did it before it was called time boxing. And but I don't leave the cushion in between each box. And so if something out of my control makes that 45-minute block take 60 minutes, now I am 15 minutes into my next block. And when I'm in complete control, but when it involves another person who messes that up, like, tell us what to do with in between the boxes.
Can I add to that question as well?
Yes, of course.
Because I've tried time boxing, and I'm continually trying it. I haven't given up, but like on the same kind of question is, I sometimes don't know how long something takes me.
It takes how long you say it's going to take. Like you like, unless it's like building something you've never built before. But like if you have to, and I'll let Sarah answer this instead of me. But like if you have to work on the chapters for our book, right? You give it 2 hours. That's how long it takes. It takes that 2 hours. But then the maintenance guy comes and takes a half hour away from that. Like
right?
That takes so anyway. Sarah, speak. Get us out of this hole.
It is kind of like a common sense issue. Like if you've allotted your 2 hours for writing and then you get interrupted, I think you have to it's like a split second decision. And I think it has to be a guilt-free. That's important. It has to just be an immediate acceptance of my day changed. And I used to really struggle with that. Like really, really struggle. And in fact, that's part of why I started time boxing, because it helped me to in a weird way. I don't know how to get into it without the weeds in way deep into the weeds, more than we need to go. But I would be like, oh no, like I plan to do this today and now I'm not accomplishing that. What do I do? And actually time boxing helped me really relax. So if you're struggling with, I don't know, like kind of obsessive wanting to do certain things on certain days, like I was, time boxing helped me relax because I knew, well, it's on the calendar, like for a day. So I know that I'll get to it and I don't have to have it in my head. It's like the scheduling version of morning pages. Once you put it on the calendar, it's not rolling around in your head. So for me, just having something time blocked out means that there's a task or an event or a communication that I need to, send or respond to that I know I need to do. And if I need to wiggle it around later in the day or even bump it to another week, I'm okay with that. I'm able to scan and see what's actually urgent. So again, how do we prioritize? And then if it's not urgent, you just have to be okay with like giving it a bump, in terms of estimating time, I feel like that's just hit or miss. Like, I don't think I'm correct. Like there's a task for work that I'm doing right now that is related to like our review process. And I was thinking it would take me like 8 hours. And I'm pretty sure I've spent like 10 or 15 hours on it already. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, okay, after I get back from my trip, I'm just going to try and not be upset that it's probably going to take way longer than I originally anticipated. But I'm leaving, you know, a lot of blank space on my calendar, you know, kind of suggesting to me that that's time for that. So I think just never, okay. So for me, a great system is if something took too long or if something went faster than you thought, I might the next day or the end of the day revise the calendar to reflect what really happened and bump something.
Yeah.
And that can help you in the future, because I think if you're learning to use a calendar system for yourself and you're really looking at your iCal or your GCal or whatever, your Outlook calendar, like every day, you're going to be in there constantly. I mean, I'm literally like all the time. And it, even though that sounds boring and terrible, I think it helps me to make more space to do the fun stuff when I stay on track with what I'm planning for myself.
And you run the calendar. It doesn't run you. I mean, you're in charge of the calendar. So
that's what I'm saying is like, I know like, I'm not going to do this today. I'm going to bump it. I think the trick is like at some point that thing you're bumping, you're going to have to decide, am I just deleting this? or am I really just bumping it until it's my time to do this? So
that's great.
I feel like we're talking a lot about like as if I'm like the business organization guru. I'm really not. I'm just a lady who has a wild amount of responsibilities, and I'm somehow managing to keep my head afloat. That's the only thing that makes me like qualified to talk about this, because I will say that I have a lot of people that are like, I don't understand how you're doing everything you're doing. And I'm like, it is just organizational skills. Like that's the only way to get all of this done.
You're in a long line of guests who and Emily knew I was going to say this, who bat away their expertise. Like, I'm not really an expert. Yes, you are.
Yeah, we've had everybody has said that. That's so funny.
Well, I think that's how you feel it, unless someone's given you like a gold star of like, you're a productivity expert. I'm like, I haven't written a book about this. Like, you know, like I talk about it. And all I do is try to share what has worked for me. And then now anecdotally, you know, what is working for all of these young people that I'm just absolutely blessed to be able to work with. And, you know, some of them will be like, oh, that one didn't work for me. I couldn't do it. And I always kind of am like, user error. But everything doesn't have to work for everyone. But you know, to kind of go back to, because I want to make sure I underscore for your listeners who, you know, presumably are people interested in writing, like, why am I on this podcast? Like, obviously I'm a writer and I support writers through what I do, but this work, the productivity paired with the mindfulness, is really helpful for writers. And I think one of the more helpful parts, I'll break it down into two things. I did not like plan this in advance. Oh, should this be my call to action? Actually,
sure,
if you're ready. Yeah.
That's what it is. I have a dual call to action, and it's really just simple. It's what I ask my students to do. I'm like, sorry, I'm such a hand talker.
I get it.
For those that are maybe watching instead of listening, they're like seeing my hands all over the place, probably very distracting. But okay, call to action is the same thing that I ask of my students. One is try to implement a mindfulness practice into your writing life. And I'm going to give a couple examples that are not just the ones we talked about, but actually go a step further. These are ones I also use in like an advanced writing and editing workshop that I teach. So one could be meeting up with a friend, talking to them about your manuscript, and then doing a breathing exercise together. And then both of you write. So I call it companionate writing, when you're kind of side by side or across from someone and you're both working and writing. But that accountability can be really helpful. But adding that kind of shared mindfulness moment together can be a wonderful ritual, but you can also do it on your own. So that's, I guess that's my first call to action for the writers who are listening is meet up with a friend and do something mindful together. Or it could be you read a poem together, you could take a walk together and then go sit at a coffee shop, do something mindful, then sit down and write with them. I absolutely promise you it will be an enjoyable experience as long as the person you picked is someone you like. Okay, great. And then, you'll be fine. And then the second call to action that I would give to listeners is that it can be really easy to fall into the trap of writing with inspiration. But as we know, successful writers are able to somehow catapult past having the kind of writing feeling and just write when they have time.
They just write anyway.
They just write anyway.
That's the name of our book.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yes. Oh my gosh. Could I have such a weapon more? This. Okay, I can't wait to read it. And so we'll have to have you come talk about it at WriterFest because this I'm so on board for this.
Yes.
But
it'll be done by then.
Oh
yeah, we're working on it.
Wonderful. So the biggest thing I think is write anyway, but to make it more grounded and kind of the real call to action here is use your time blocking skills to actually have writing on your schedule and some of you are so well beyond that. You're like, yeah, duh. Like I write every morning. I know people that write from like 5 to 6 a.m. every single day. And
wow.
I'm like, they're psychos because why? But good luck to them. We're all jealous of their ability to schedule their life like that. Some of us can't wake up until at least 6:30 or 7, but it's fine. Or later, no judgment. But if you're not someone that has time blocked in, and by that I just mean using your calendar, like saying and you can start with once a week. You can just say from 10 to 11 a.m. every Saturday, I'm giving myself 1 hour. If you are a parent, get a babysitter or a co-parent or a neighbor to watch your kids, go sit at that coffee shop for 1 hour. And then that is 1 hour. You can probably write 500 to 1,000 words, maybe more, 2,000 words. It just depends on your writing speed and how familiar you are with whatever you're working on in that 1 hour. And if you then calculate, okay, if you write 1,500 words a week for how many weeks, when will you hit your word count goal for your project? That's an incredible thing. And it's breaking everything down bite size. It's so much more attainable and mentally more easy to kind of keep on track if you have that. So the last few months I have been extra busy and I have not been working on my manuscript, but I've still had twice a week on my calendar, write 800 words. Like that was my calculation at that time for how much I wanted to get done by X amount of time. I am not hitting it. I did not do well here, but that's okay because guess what?
Yeah.
Next week I'm planning on actually, getting back into that particular project again. And I'll refigure out like writing something is better than writing nothing if your goal is to publish something. And if you need to downsize, I think the biggest mistake people make is thinking they have to write every single day. Sorry if your book says that, but I think just do something that you can do and let the rest flow from that. And I find that to be the only way I can give myself permission to give myself grace when I spend a couple months not writing the way I should, but then I'm back on, for several months at a time being extremely productive. So a lot to say. Just put this in your calendar, yo.
You're saying that the final chapter shouldn't be called "When Sara Wigal Says Take a Day Off, Write Anyway."
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I don't know. We gotta rest. We gotta pause sometimes.
Yeah. So, oh, absolutely.
No, I mean, I know people that they're very into it has to be every single day, and a lot of very famous writers say that. But I also think that can be really intimidating. Maybe there's a certain level you get to, and then it's write every day. But how are you going to go from being scared to write to all of a sudden you're writing every day? There has to be a way to get there. And I think the way to get there is probably to make a compromise about writing once a week or 4 times a week or whatever that is for someone's life and lifestyle.
Amazing advice. I absolutely love it. Sara, thank you so much for this. We just absolutely love this conversation.
You are
Thank you
so
so
welcome.
much, Sara.
You're so welcome. This has been a blast. I love getting to talk to and about writers. That's kind of what I do all day. It's great.
I love it.
There you go.
There you go.
And we're back. That was great. And
It was wonderful.
I can honestly say it was great because in a previous episode I was like, oh yeah, that was amazing when he said the thing that he said, and we hadn't recorded it yet. And so now we have recorded this one, and so I know that it was great.
Yes.
And the other one was great too.
And
so.
she decided to talk to us while she was at the beach. I was honored that she took a break from her beach time because I'm not sure much could drag me off of the beach if I was.
Did you know she was at the beach?
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Now I wish I was at the beach. All right.
Yes.
Hey, John Myers.
Yes.
You are a self-proclaimed fan of Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah, we have the same birthday.
Oh. I stumbled across a story about him that he told himself. And it's very possible that you've already heard it, but I thought our listeners could hear it. But first, I'll just ask you, why would Kurt Vonnegut go out to buy an envelope?
Oh, I know exactly why.
I'm not
my gosh, I'm going to get one right.
You are going to get one right.
A single envelope, because his wife is like, why don't you just... I don't think she said Amazon, but we'll put a link to buy envelopes in the comments below from our Amazon affiliate. And no, because he likes to go out of his bubble and talk to people and talk to the clerk at the stationery store who I no doubt made fun. He's no longer with us, so we can say this. Who no doubt made fun of him for coming in to buy an envelope. A single envelope, because they were like, now we got to open a whole package of them. And but yeah, that's why. And so did you know? So here, hey Emily Brooks, do you know where you can still buy a single envelope? This one's easy.
A single envelope?
Yes.
Can you do that at the post office?
Yeah, you can buy it with a stamp on it at the post office.
Oh, it has to have a stamp on it.
So if Adrian Sanders, former postal worker, was here, she would confirm that for me.
Oh, yes.
But you're just going to have to take my word for it.
So I didn't stump you, but I'm going to share the quote. And there's some swearing in it, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. And he says, and of course the computers will do us out of that. And what the computer people don't realize or they don't care is we're dancing animals. You know, we love to move around, and it's like we're not supposed to dance at all anymore.
Those computer people.
I spend so much time on my computer, but I did think it was really just a sweet story that he was like, I need to just get out of the house, which is what we talk about all the time on here, right? Get out of your bubble. And he was talking about the importance of that. And like, he's like, I get to meet a lot of people. A fire engine goes by. I give them the thumbs up. Like, I'll ask a woman what kind of dog that is. And like, he's just talking about getting out of his bubble.
Exactly. I almost brought this up when we had Sara, that so Charles Schulz, who worked from home, who drew Charlie Brown and Snoopy from home, he had his office on his property, but it was not in his house. And so there was a walk to his property. But every morning, talk about write every day, he drew every day.
Yes, yeah.
And he would go to his favorite diner and have a glass of orange juice and an English muffin every morning, and then go to work, because he believed that you got dressed to go to work every day. Yeah. And so it was part of his routine was to get dressed and go to work. And I knew a guy who, I can't remember who it was not Mike Moretta, who worked from home and had a separate office, and he would get in his car, drive and get Starbucks or whatever, and then come back, because he wanted a daily commute. to
I have I have a brother-in-law who did that.
Okay, maybe that's a guy I know.
It was just part of like, I mean, I doubt it. But yeah, it's just part of that routine. I love that.
Yep, there you go.
You know what that means?
You got to ring a bell.
Oh, why do I always forget about ringing the bell?
I told you let Winnie ring
I
the
think
bell.
it's because I kind of hate saying it. It feels so needy.
It would solve it if you let Winnie ring the bell.
Winnie's abandoned me. She doesn't even care anymore.
Aww. Happy anniversary, by the way. Hey, everybody. It was Emily's wedding anniversary since the last time we saw each other.
Yes, it was yesterday, or 2 days ago, but not when this podcast came out.
No, and so here's how my brain worked. I said ring the bell, and I thought of wedding bells, and then I thought it was your anniversary, and so that was the connection. Okay, ring the bell.
Yes, everybody. We couldn't have done it without you, is what we always say, and it's true. Yes. And so please like and subscribe and share our podcast with your friends.
Share it.
All right, now it's time for the final act. I'm going to share my screen because I've got instructions. Hold on. I got to close all my tabs.
Well, first I need a prize or I'm not playing.
Your prize is all of these books that you probably already have by Kurt Vonnegut.
So I wanted to hold up Kurt Vonnegut books, but they're over next to my desk, which is over there. Richard Brautigan and Kurt Vonnegut are the ones by my desk and some screenwriting ones.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I have all of them.
I had a feeling. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to go to a page, but I'm not going to be able to look at you. No, that's not going to work.
Well, while you're figuring that out, I'll tell the listeners, Mark Vonnegut, Kurt Vonnegut's son, wrote a book about his battle with schizophrenia. But I don't know when, 30 years ago probably, and it was fascinating. And he was a good writer too. And then he's kind of learned how to navigate his schizophrenia. And so 25 years later or 20 years, I don't know all the facts. 30 years later, he wrote a follow-up to it, and it was also very well written. Mark Vonnegut.
Awesome. Okay, I think I found out how to do this. All right, here we go. So this game is...
I can see both of us and the properly colored thing.
The John Myers Bookshelf
Lord.
Scavenger Hunt. I'm going to time you. I'm going to time you.
The last book I read's over there. I got to get up. Oh, well.
You're going to have to get up. I'm sorry. But so you have 1 minute to gather the last book you read, a book you haven't read, a signed book, a book you couldn't put down, a book that challenged you, and a book that made you laugh.
All in a minute.
In a minute.
How am I going to get to Barnes & Noble and back in time?
I'm just saying.
Some of the books are behind. Some of the books are behind that shiny thing.
Well.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, leave this up because I got to leave to go get the last book I read. It's over there.
Okay. And go. The last book you read, a book you haven't read, a signed book.
I was wrong.
A book...
It was right here. So
what is that?
The last book I read is...
Oh, no, you don't have to tell us in 1 minute. Go, hurry. Be quick.
A book you haven't read.
You can show us all the books when you're done.
Oh, okay. A signed book. Oh. Looks like it got dark outside your window. I know that can't be possible because I beat the challenge. I got that done in 15 seconds, didn't I? That was amazing.
So amazing.
All right, so
what'd you bring?
Tell me what they are.
Well, I put it away.
I don't have the list anymore.
The last book you read.
The Protagonist's Journey by Scott Myers. that I've been wanting to
Ooh.
hold up. See, it's even got its bookmarks in there. That I've been wanting to hold up forever. It's very worthwhile. It's almost like a textbook, and it breaks down proper protagonist fashioning, and well, actually storytelling. An introduction to character-driven screenwriting and storytelling. Good job, Scott Myers.
Excellent.
Next,
A book you haven't read.
a book that I haven't read is The 1 Week Baby.
The 1 Week Baby, which
Not
we
only have
talked
I not read it, I
extensively
don't know
about.
how it wound up in the house. And it was someone bought it at Kmart. The full price was $3.50, and it has a sticker on it for $2.82. It's a little bit too racy for my
I wonder how many times
liking.
we can get that book on the podcast. A signed book.
A signed book. Funny you should ask. If we ever did the what's her name now? Abigail Riley's Dress Like Your Book.
Oh yeah.
That match dress, whatever. Make your wardrobe match your book. It was going to be this one.
Oh.
It's Squeaky Poems by Jack Handey. I have many Jack
Nice.
Handey books that are autographed, but just to show you, there it is. There's Jack
Awesome.
Handey's autograph. We will be talking about him in a future episode. Next.
A book you couldn't put down.
Well, the book I couldn't put down, I apparently put down because I couldn't find it. And well, I found a newer edition.
But you found it in 15 seconds.
Well, yeah, I found a newer edition of it. I wanted to hold up I had the original, the one with the pink copy that was like the properly sized, like little paperback size, not this big 5x7 one. And it's Trout Fishing in America by Richard Brautigan. That is my favorite book of all time.
Nice.
And I have many copies of the pink covered one, and I can't find them anywhere. I also grabbed Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne because all adults should reread this. I like to have a tradition of rereading it. I like to say January 1st, but at least in the first week of the year, and you will find something. I do this every year. You will find something you never saw before in it. And I've read it a bazillion times.
I love that. My husband and I just rewatched the cartoon, and it's so good.
There you go.
A book that challenged you.
The Promise of Failure by my friend John McNally.
Ooh.
It's a creative writing craft book, and it says we need to embrace failure, and it's very challenging for me, and he knows that. I'll just leave it at that.
Any of these books that are available on Bookshop will be on our Bookshop.
Oh my goodness.
A book that made you laugh.
Is this the last one?
Yes.
So a book that made me laugh, the first one that I thought of was also by Jack Handey, and Jack Handey, The Stench of Honolulu. And then last year, it was almost exactly a year ago, the sequel came out called Escape from Hawaii, a tropical sequel. And it is also autographed. Look, he wrote me a whole big long story in there.
Nice.
And they're both hilarious. He has a new book coming out, which we'll talk about on a future episode.
Indeed. Fantastic.
Now the sun's coming up. It's already tomorrow.
It's like it's pouring outside all of a sudden.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of cozy though. Well,
thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank
for watching
you.
Whatever you did.
And we
couldn't have done it without you.
you.